That's a really good question.
I thought about wearing it, like bling.
Wrestling's pretty good. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Frank Castle is in my bones. Like Frank Castle is in my bones.
I know that I could sense when you used to go on Opie and Anthony, there was a reverence for Jim Norton, and certainly when you do Jim and Sam. So I just thought it was so awesome that you've been asking him to open for you. You got him on the roast. He's going to be in this festival. What's it like for you to ask a guy like that, who you have a lot of respect for, to open for you? Is it kind of a tricky thing actually at first?
It is and it isn't, because I think sometimes the ask isn't necessarily like, hey, will you be my opener? It's more like, hey man, I'm doing something really cool. Do you want to jump on? So like especially like I had Greg Fitzsimmons, who I massively respect. And these are all the elder statesmen. When I started stand-up, they were a class ahead of me. But I was talking to Greg and I was like, yeah, I'm at the Amalie Arena in Tampa. He's like, what's that seat? And I was like, a lot. And he's like, man, I wonder what that's like. I go, why don't you do it? And he was like, for real? I go, yeah, just jump on with me. And so it's crazy. I texted Rich Voss yesterday and said, hey man, I'd love to have you on some of these arena dates if you want to do it. And he's like, yeah, hell yeah. It's more of an opportunity to get to share a cool experience with a friend than it is have an opener. Because trust me, it is tough following these guys. I mean, they're legends. But it's more like, hey, I'm doing something cool if you want to hop on, as opposed to, like, I would never ask them to open for me at a theater or even a club. Like, I would never ask that. But at the arenas, it's different.
And obviously he's been doing very well still. I mean, he does do theaters. He's got the radio show. He's got some podcasts. But does it feel good? I mean, obviously with your audience and everything you have going on now, you're going to give him a little bit of a bump, and people are going to say, oh yeah, there's Jim Norton again, or people are become aware of him for the first time. Some of your fans. So does that feel good knowing that that's probably going to happen?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, a perfect example is Dave Attell. I mean, I get Dave Attell on Fully Loaded, and you watch people they're blown away. Look, guys like Jim and Dave aren't on social media the way I am. They aren't jumping on every podcast the way I do. They're not promoting. I mean, I don't think Dave really promotes any of his shows, or Jim for that matter. And they're legends. And so, I mean, my favorite part is my daughter does Fully Loaded. She is a PA on Fully Loaded. So to watch her watch these guys is amazing. I mean, my daughters went to the roast. Whitney did a roast, and they saw Jim Norton roast me. And they were like, Dad, who the hell is that? When he said to Donnell Rollins, you look like the Tootsie Roll Pop and the owl. And my daughters were like, how does he think of stuff like that? I'm like, that's why that Jim Norton is one of the quickest, funniest, smartest, and I love where he's going with his stand-up. We did the Comedy Mothership in Austin together, and I said, hey, you want to jump on and go up in front of me? He's like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. Well, I mean, they say, are you sure? Because they know that I'm gonna have a tough time following them,
Maybe.
But the stuff he's talking about right now with his relationship and is just fucking, I mean, it's legendary.
Another kind of current topic. Is there concern that Ian Fidance is injured going into the ski trip?
Yes, there is major concern. Yeah, yes.
What's he gonna do? He's saying he was on their show yesterday saying he's gonna go. He's still gonna do it. Like, he's got a terrible back, right?
Yeah, who cares? Yeah, you only live once. Carpe diem. Ian's not someone who's been cautious with anything he's ever done. He's the guy that introduced me to male glory holes on the Lower East Side. I don't think Ian's looking both ways before he crosses the street.
Your special is still pretty new. I thought the backdrop was awesome. What went into that decision to get that nice backdrop?
Well, and I'm pretty meticulous about specials. And what happened was I watched Ali Wong's, and I loved her backdrop, but I noticed that in a special, all you see is this much of your backdrop. So like I remember loving John Mulaney's backdrop of, what is it, Kid Gorgeous or whatever.
I think it was
huge in Radio City, this huge backdrop. And I loved it. And I was like, I want something like that. And then I watched Ali Wong's, and I was like, oh, all you're seeing is this little square right here. So You can put as much as you want in the back, but all you're going to catch is this, and it's usually going to be out of focus. And I came up with the name of the special first, and I brought it to my set designer, and I was like, it's Razzle Dazzle. So I want sparkles, I want lights, I want shimmering, I want all of that in the backdrop. And so they made it. They made that whole backdrop, and I loved it. I use what's crazy is you say it, you tell them what you want, but you don't see it until the day of. And so you better fucking like it. And I loved it.
I got to ask you about your closer. You know, a lot of times you watch a special and you'd be like, maybe you should close with that third joke or something. There's no way you could have closed with anything else, I thought. And so when you do that, when you pick that to be your closer, do you make it stronger and like kind of pace it out and set it up because you know it's going to be the closer, or was that bit always that way when you're working it out?
So, this is like very interesting question. So my closer, in my opinion, was Raffle. So the way I work a Netflix special is, and I started doing this on Secret Time. I was talking to 2 comedians, and they said they had Netflix specials, and they both said they only watch 30 minutes. And I was like, what? And they're like, they're only going to watch 30 minutes. You can just, if you have a good joke, I put it, like, they said it like in passing, you know, but they only watch 30 minutes. That's the algorithm. You're never going to get them to watch a full hour. And I asked Robbie Pro about it, and he said, yeah, you know, most specials, most people turn off after 30 minutes. So when I did Secret Time, I put my closer at 23 minutes. And I said, well, if they're only watching 30, I'm going to put my closer at 23 minutes. And then if you hear my closer at 23 minutes, there's no way you're going to turn it off. You're going to be like, God, that was a funny fucking joke. And then I go, look, if you get to the end of the special and you watch the whole special, fantastic. But I need to get you past that 30-minute mark. So I did that for Hey Big Boy and Secret Time. And for this one, I did the same thing. I felt like I put all my good jokes up front, and I had my closer was started at like 27 minutes. It's the raffle. I thought the raffle was the strongest bit. My goal was to get a good closer. And I honestly did not think Escape Room was as good as I'm shocked as many people have talked about Escape Room to me. Because I go, that means you watched the whole special. Like, I'm shocked because no one watches the whole specials. And I honestly feel like my daughter, Georgia, helped me write that joke. She called me on stage one time, and I answered. She's in college. I'm nervous. I go, what's up? She goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm on stage. She goes, oh, have you talking about the escape room? I said, what? She goes, remember the escape room we went with Nana and Papa? And I was like, oh, yeah. No, I'm not talking about it. She goes, you should talk about it. I said, I don't really remember it. She goes, remember we only wanted to watch Pop have a panic attack or lose his shit? And I went, oh. And the audience laughed. She goes, you remember the guy was like creepy? He's in the robe. And I was like, oh. And then the audience laughed. She goes, Mom solved all the clues. And I was like, right. Papa yelled at you. Nana asked if they were going to tie us up. She literally wrote the whole fucking joke as I'm on phone. And then I just hung up with her and I started telling it. But I don't think, I never saw that as I'm always shocked people like that as much as they do.
Yeah, I just kind of like in your wheelhouse. That's what you're good at, right? Like telling a story, personal, it goes somewhere, is a big delivery. So I think your fans probably absolutely love that.
Yeah, I think the hardest part with that story was the end.
Yeah.
Is because you need it to end, and the crescendo of it ending. I think that's the best part of that story is that it ends and you know it's over. And I didn't figure that out until like probably 3 weeks before, because I had the story of, I loved the story of Isla singing Happy Birthday next to me and the thing. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if and I was like, but if I can't use that if I use the other one because it's both birthdays. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if I do the Happy Birthday and then close again with another Happy Birthday, if that'll tie the two together and everyone will know it's over.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
Very well, yeah.
The working out of a story is really, it's really complicated, but so stupid because it's sometimes a person from afar can see it a lot better than you can because you're married to too many truths or you're married to too many of the facts. But yeah, I'm really shocked people like that as much as they did.
So you've obviously done so well with so many things. But I remember listening to the Sandler interview, and it hit me hard too because he's one of my heroes also.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, just like it was great. I felt bad for you. I think it was like that night or the next day he tweeted how good your special was. So were you able to recover through that?
Oh, well, I mean, so I didn't know I screwed the pooch. Like I thought I hit
I
it out
mean,
of the
kind of
park.
like to be fair, it's kind of just you having fun too. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, but I left Whitney's house in my car going like, killed it. And the first person that called me was Big J Okerson. And he was like, dude, Sandler interview? And I was like, I know, right? And he was like, just giving you a heads up, we're about to trash you. I was like, for what? He goes, are you being serious? I'm getting on the 101. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, you asked him if he had Netflix. And I said, yeah, he does. And he goes, of course he does. He has a $300 million deal at Netflix. That's the dumbest question. He goes, you miscalled his movie. I said, Precious Gems? And he goes, it's not Precious Gems, Bert. It's whatever the fuck it's called. And then he goes, Bert, and then Spade fucking called me and was like, dude, the Sandler interview. And I'm like, I started melting down going like, his Spade's like, you're fucking Farley, buddy. You're Farley interviewing Paul McCartney. You didn't let him talk. And I was like, holy shit. And then I started panicking going like, oh, I look like and then I watched it and I was like, oh my God. I literally was like, hey, Adam, do you want to hear a cool story? Like, what the fuck? And I started melting down. And then Spade voice texted me again. He's like, dude, fucking Sandler loves you. He watched your special. I was like, are you being serious? He's like,
That's
he
awesome.
loves you. And then we ended up doing a deal with Happy Madison to do a movie. So
Awesome.
like, it was really great, but it was like, I often think like the funniest I ever was in college when I wasn't trying to be funny and I was just being myself. And I think sometimes you get glimpses of that where don't know what, like Kool-Aid is a perfect example. Like the Kool-Aid clip, was not trying to be funny. And I think that's why it's so funny is I literally was drinking a gallon of Kool-Aid every day thinking I was being healthy.
I got to ask you about Fully Loaded. You know, of all the stuff you've done, this seems like pretty different. You've never really done like a traveling show with so many people and it's going to be a cruise. Like what went into that and the planning and wanting to do that?
Well, so when during the pandemic, I came up with a tour concept where we took stages around the country and set up stages at drive-in movie theaters, streamed onto the big screen, did a show outdoors. Everyone came in their trucks and their cars and tailgated and grilled and had couches. It was the coolest experience I'd ever had in comedy. And I kept thinking, I want to share that. But the drive-ins weren't ideal. They just weren't ideal. Everyone in their cars, comics didn't like it. I loved it, but I loved the experience I was giving people in the pandemic. And so I told my manager, I said, I wouldn't mind doing this at amphitheaters because amphitheaters, you can really feel the kickback. And he was like, what about baseball parks? I go, fuck yeah, I love baseball parks. So last year we did the first Fully Loaded. And it was epic. It was Attell, Shane Gillis, Sal Vulcano, me, Fortune, Nikki. It was huge. It was huge. Mark Norman. And it was really great. We only did like 8 dates and it was fucking fun. And then I was like, we go bigger. And so this year we're doing 4 weeks. We've got more comics and for me, it was not as much about, it's definitely not about the money. I can make way more money just touring by myself, but it was about the experience of getting to hang with comics. The same way a podcast is, like I was talking to David Cross. I was doing a podcast with him and he was like, so why do you do a why do you do a podcast? And I was like, cause I would never get a chance to sit down with you for an hour and a half and talk about comedy. And that's all I want to do. Yeah. I love David Tell. I'm never getting him to sit at a table with me for an hour and a half. But if he comes to my house, he'll sit with me for an hour and a half and talk about comedy.
Right.
For me, this is a cheat code to get to hang out with comedians way better than me and literally fucking laugh my ass off. I mean, we laughed so much last year just off stage. And then watching the comics, the best comics in the world go on stage in an arena or at a baseball park and murder and have fun. I mean, Nikki Glaser performed with her shirt off at a baseball park. And it's just fun. If you're with them all day, you're at a baseball park, everyone's fucking around, you're in the outfield, you're playing around, you're working out. We did yoga, we did weightlifting, you're doing polar plunges, We went to the Kentucky Derby. I mean, it was like, it's a cheat code for me to just have fun during the summer. And this one, I mean, the lineup is fucking sick. I mean, Lewis Black, David Tell, Jim Norton, Tammy Pescatelli, Ralph Barbosa, Mark Norman, Shane Gillis, Big J. Oakson, Dan Soder, Rosebud Baker. I mean, but more importantly, both my daughters are going to PA for it. My wife is directing the whole festival, like she's organizing it. So then my daughters, and they're both bringing friends, they're going to PA. So they're on the tour bus. We've got all my favorite comics on the tour bus. We'll party at night. We'll hang out, work out in the afternoon, do stand up in the early evening, watch the sunset. It's a cheat code to have fun in the summer for me.
You know, I've heard you talk about this a little bit. You know, obviously you're still popping the top off. That's a big part of what you do and who you are and what your fans like. But I've heard you talk about kind of the early days, like you know, obviously, especially in LA around the Comedy Store, there's so many old school, these are the rules comics. Like, how tough was it to get past guys are like, dude, keep your shirt on, just tell jokes, man? Like, how tough was it to get past that? And obviously you won everybody over. Kind of what went into that and how tough was it?
It was really tough. It was really tough. I mean, up until, it was still tough. Like 4 years ago. I mean, 4 years ago, before the pandemic, I remember people would like just make a snide comment, and then other people loved it. Like Norm Macdonald, he was laughing. So when I got off stage, one of the times I got to hang out with him, he just kept going, "I love your shirts off. Your shirts off. Your shirts off. You don't mention it. Your shirts off." David Letterman I'm gonna say as a fan, but he's texted or voicemailed me and talked about me in interviews, and he finds it hilarious that I perform with my shirt off and I don't mention it. That I just take it off and perform shirtless. And then there's comics and that can be a little cunty, and they're like, "You're not gonna take your shirt off, are you?" Yeah. And I'm like, "Yeah, man. Like, I would never tell you what to wear on stage. It makes me comfortable. I'm not comfortable performing with a shirt on." And then and there's people that think that it's I've heard New York comics say, I can't, like, I was listening to a Rogan, and Shane Gillis was like, "Yeah, it's funny when people critique him for taking his shirt off. They've never been in an arena when he takes it off. The pop is fucking huge." Yeah. And it is. I mean, first of all, it's fun. I'm not some political fucking edgy dude trying to like break down walls. I'm not talking about trans swimmers on stage. Like, I'm a fun guy. I just want to have a fucking good time. And if you come to my show, I want you to have a fucking blast. I want you to giggle. And I know, I feel like it's like the most Florida thing I can do is take my shirt off.
How happy are you that the Machine movie is happening at this point in your career? Because you're not an up and coming actor. You're a stand-up that tours and does huge arenas. You have all these huge podcasts. You can go on your friends' podcasts and talk to millions of people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're just an actor on the way up and this is your one shot, like there's a lot of nerves there. Are you kind of happy with where this is in your career?
I'm so lucky that I failed for as long as I did. Like, I'm being dead serious. Everyone should be as lucky as I am to find success at 44 and to have a movie come out at 50. Because I mean, it's the perfect code. I hate to be, I look at like Amy Schumer and all the pressure that was on her at what, 27. Yeah. I can't imagine. There's no pressure on me. I'm failing upwards. I feel like I'm just the luckiest fucking guy in the world. And it's like, it's like perfect. Like, I've told this story now for like, I think like 10 years. I still tell it every time on stage. And it's just like, it's like, fuck all the rules to comedy. Like, that's how I feel. Like, they tell you got to retire good jokes. You can't keep telling them. You can't perform with your shirt off. You're never gonna, if you do television, you're not gonna do movies. I mean, I've not listened to a fucking soul ever, and I've broken every fucking rule. And I feel like everyone should be this lucky. I worked at Travel Channel for 9 years. I started a podcast when everyone's like, "Oh, you're gonna start a pod." I mean, all the rules that you hear comics that fail consistently talk about either in the back bar at the store or at this table in the cellar. You can't do that, man. That when I was a young comic, I got pulled aside by a bunch of comics, and they were like, "You can't work the door. you can't work the door. If you work the door and you're barking, you're not considered a real comic. And I remember thinking, you know, I didn't grow up like these kids. I grew up in Florida. Like I grew up with like in Florida. It was a different, you don't, I'm not to say that like they weren't men, but like I didn't like cower to dudes because their opinion and listen to people's opinion. I was like, I was in college for 7 fucking years while you've been practicing stand-up. I'm just getting into this. I'm a little more grown up. I was 26 years old. And I was like, wait, you're telling me I can't work the door because you won't consider me a comic? I was like, I don't really care what you think. I care that I'm getting on stage every night and that I'm learning how to do stand-up. That's the thing I need to do is learn how to do stand-up. And so, and then 6 months later, I got discovered by Will Smith, and all those same people were like, well, shit, I want to work the door now. And then you're like, oh, so there's no rules in this business and you shouldn't listen to a fucking soul. So, I feel like, and like I said, no one fucking gets success at 44. Like, it's crazy.
I feel like everyone's worked the door too. It's such a stupid thing that somebody said. Like literally, everyone has worked the door.
Well, yeah. Now, I mean, in 1997, 98.
Yeah.
I mean, you did not. There was a guy named Louis Schaefer. He was the only one working the door,
Wow.
and their argument may have been accurate. I don't think people considered him a real stand-up. They considered him a guy that could get him on stage. But I was like, fuck it. If you get on stage, you get better at stand-up. I just want to get better at stand-up.
How long was their progress on the movie, the Machine movie? How long were you trying to get it made?
Oh, fucking. I mean, technically, since the first time I told it. I mean, I went Donner. I forget his name. I think it's Richard Donner. He did Goonies. I think that's who he is.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I that was the first time I ever pitched the Machine, but I didn't know what I was pitching. I just knew I had a good story, and that it was liked by a lot of people, and that must have been probably 10 years ago, and then I would just consistently pitch it. I mean, I pitched it to Ed Helms' company. I pitched it everywhere. I pitched it so much that the day I sold it, I didn't pitch it. I was tired of pitching it. I was like, this movie's not getting made. And I went into Legendary, and a guy named Kale was behind a desk, and I pitched him 3 movies, all really good movies, but 3 really good movie pitches. And he goes, all right, I'll make it. I'll make one. Which one do you want to make? And I went, what? He goes, I like all 3 of them. And I like you. I think you'd be good in a movie. Let's make a movie. I want to make a movie with you. What one do you want to make? And I went, well, hold on. If you're telling me I get to make a movie, I want to make The Machine. And he goes, well, that's what I was hoping you were going to pitch. And I was like, he was like, well, let's make The Machine. And I said, well, I don't want to. I said, I feel like, he goes, why? And I said, well, I'm really, honestly, I'm afraid it's going to do fucking great. And the Russian mafia will see it and they'll kidnap me. And he went, and he literally froze and he goes, sold. I said, what? He goes, that's our movie. You get kidnapped by the Russian mafia. And I was like, what? And he goes, it's The Hangover meets Godfather 2. I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, dude, sold. We're doing it. That was probably, that was probably 4 years ago. And then we wrote one version. He didn't like it so much. We wrote another. The first version had Segura in it. And then we rewrote it and with my dad and then immediately they were like, and I mean, this is the weirdest set of circumstances. I did not understand what any of this was. I remember when we got greenlit to make the movie, I didn't understand that we were actually making the movie. I thought there was another year that would go on. Like, I didn't know. And Peter Atencio, our director, came to my house with a bottle of Blanton's. And he was like, and it was during the pandemic. And he was like, congrats. And I go, yeah, it's cool, man. I really honestly didn't understand we were going to Serbia. Like, I did not and he was like, congrats. He's like, we're going to fucking Serbia. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, dude, we're greenlit. We're greenlit. It's happening. And I was like, what do you mean? Don't we have to like pass through a couple more barriers? And he goes, no, we're going to fucking Serbia. And all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, I'm making a fucking movie. Like, let's be really honest. I wasn't reading the fucking notes and the scripts. They were sending them. And I was like, it was 4 fucking years. No one, hats off to anyone in Hollywood who can focus for 4 years on one thing. I would get scripts and everyone, I'd see the email, love this new script, love it. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to fucking, what am I going to read it and dislike it? Everyone seems to like it. I was like, I'll just sit back in the cut, let it happen. I was like, I trust Kale. I trust Peter. Those 2 dudes are smart as fuck. I was like, I'm not. I mean, we got to Serbia, and I was like, I should read the latest version of the script. I was like, does anyone print me a script and send it to my house? And they're like, huh? I was like, yeah. I mean, I didn't want to get in the way of something good. Everyone seemed to be liking things, and I was like, well, let's do it. And then we're starting, and then literally, I was nervous about my acting, so I just said, I'm going to read the script every day. I'm going to read the script. I'm going to just read it over and over and over again. I must have read it 20 fucking times. And then, and I was like, I thought I was bad at memorizing. It turns out I'm actually really fucking good at memorization. I did not know that. And it was a fucking blast, man. I never wanted to do a movie in my entire career. I had no interest in doing movies. I thought I would do podcasts. I literally thought podcast stand up, that's my career. It's the Rogan path, right? And now I'm full fucking blown into movies. I want to do another movie so bad. I've signed up for, all I want to do is make movies. It's the funnest fucking thing I've ever done in my entire life.
What went into getting Mark cast as your dad? I still think that's so interesting.
It's fascinating because you know, it's interesting, the list of men that are age appropriate, like 70 something in Hollywood. It's a fascinating list. It's a fascinating list. And we kicked around a couple ideas, and I want to say it was Mary Parent. I'm almost certain Mary Parent, who, you know, runs everything over at Legendary, just got on we were on a Zoom, and she goes, your dad is going to be Mark Hamill. And no one had talked to Mark about it. It was just her idea. And I was like, wow. And I was like, it was just from the side. And everyone's like, and she's like, has anyone seen him? He had done the comedy of When We're in Shadows, I think.
Yeah.
Light in the Shadows. And she goes, everyone's like, he was fucking hilarious. And so they're like, let's just set up a Zoom, you and Mark, and see if you guys have energy. Set up a Zoom, and his first fucking words were, why do you take your shirt off? Shouldn't you wear like a collared shirt or a coat or a blazer on stage? And those were my dad's exact words. And I went, and literally I was like, yep, he's my dad. He is my dad. He is my dad to a T. And he's so fucking good that when, you know, Legendary was like, hey, we want you to announce the movie on your socials. We're not going to go into the trades. We're just going to have you announce it on Instagram, and then it'll get picked up that way. So they were like, shoot one of your promos. And so we were taking a private jet to Serbia. I got a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. I had a tracksuit on, and I was like, I'll do a read. And then Mark, when you come by, and he goes, just start the read. I'm like, it's so my dad. So I do the read. Hey guys, I'm going to Serbia. And I go, and play my dad. Take a look. And Mark goes, get on the plane, big boy. And it was one take. And I went, and you can literally, if you watch the promo, you can see me like go like, I guess we got it. Like, I'm like, all right, let's go make a fucking movie. One take. He is so fucking good.
So obviously with your persona, people just see the guy who likes to have fun and party, but how much work since the beginning, since you're way up when you're doing, you know, all the morning radio you can do, and obviously so much goes into the planning for, you know, things like your festival you're doing and the drive-in movies, like how much planning and hustling do you do and business and hard work like behind the scenes for where you're at?
I don't think, you know, it's so funny. There's a part of me that really wants to talk about the hard work, because I think a lot of times people think that I'm like just a drunk Forrest Gump, and that I am very, very lucky. I like isolating luck, because I think it's easier for someone to be able to see your path when you show the luck that's been tethered through it. But like, I remember I was talking to a comedian. I mean, I put a lot of thought into a lot of things that people don't think about, like business wise, like the way to run a company and what I want and what I need. And it's very primal. It's not mathematical. It's just primal. I look at everything as a fan, and how I would enjoy things, and as a fan, like I'm not a very cynical guy. I'm a very I like to have a good time. I really do. And so I look at presenting a product for you to have a good time if you're a fan. And so that's all I do. And then, but it's fun. My favorite thing is like when you talk to a comic who seems to be shrewd, who is notoriously shrewd, and they talk about their special, they're shooting a special, and it's clear to me and them when we're having a conversation about how to shoot a special that they haven't put any thought into it. That they, as shrewd as they may be or as business minded as they may be, they didn't put the proper insights. I was talking to a comic, I won't say his name. He was talking about shooting a special, and he was talking about big venues. And I said, well, you should do 4 shows. And they're like, why? I go, so you have options. I go, listen, you can't control one show. One show, I wouldn't roll the dice on one show. Fuck doing an arena. I do 4 shows in a place you can sell 4 shows, and do it in a place that hasn't seen the material. And they're like, what? I go, don't do it in a place you've already been. And they go, yeah, but I've Boston. I'm really big in Boston. I was just there. And I go, don't do it in Boston. Save a place when you do a tour. Save it for that's where I'm going to shoot my special, and build your tour. And that's the place you're going to land it. And then I said, and this blew them away. I said, and they go, 4 shows. I said, but don't put them all on sale at once. I go, if you're going to do Friday and Saturday, start with Saturday. Start with Saturday and sell those shows first. Then add Friday. And he goes, why wouldn't I do it the other way? And I said, because when you shoot a special, that first taping, the very first taping, all the cameramen are trying to figure out all their angles. They're trying to figure out their focuses. They're trying to figure out everything. Everyone, the director, the cameraman, the lighting, everyone. So even if you get it on that first show, you're never going to use that first show because not everyone else is going to get it. I said on the second show, they're going to be pretty dialed in. That'll be a great show for you. You'll be loose and they'll be loose. But the banger show is that third show, because those are your diehard fans. They bought their tickets first. Everyone on the crew has had 2 shows to get ready for this taping. You are loose and you know you got it yesterday. And that's the show that counts. That's the show you'll use. And I go, and then if you're lucky, that 4th show, you'll be so fucking loose, and so will the cameraman, that and I'm watching this person look at me going their eyes red, like, you think about this stuff? I go, I think about all this shit. Like, stand-up's very important to me, and this business, I love this business. There's nothing more than I love than fucking entertaining people, and I love arenas. I broke down my lighting package. I won't say names because they're my friends and I don't want them to sound like I'm slighting them, but like one of my best friends last night, I sent him to dinner with some of my team and said, pick their brains. Like I work with some badass. It's all, my whole team's women except for my assistant Peter. You should talk to them and they can help you figure out what you're trying to do. One of the best comics in the game, and he's only got 500,000 YouTube subscribers, and he's a monster. And I'm like, the fuck, man, you should be way more than me. But it's just, and so, I mean, I sat with Miss Pat last night. We talked business, and Byron Bowers. I love the business talk of this and how collaborative everyone is, and how, Joe established that, but like helping each other out and getting each other to blow up and is the funnest part, the funnest fucking part.
Since I got you, let me ask you a quick follow-up to all that. Is it the fun, seeing everyone blow up, hanging with guys that are your friends or that you admire, and there's performing? Is the fun what motivates you and drives you in your career?
Yeah, the fun is. I mean, it's part of the reason I started taking my shirt off, was because I had to remind myself this had to be fun, because you'd get out on the road, and I had 2 young kids, and I'd go out. I was doing Travel Channel for 2 weeks, and I'd have a week off, and I'd do stand-up, and I would get there Thursday, and it would be not have any tickets sold, and it was a half full room, and I was like, I've got fucking 5 more shows of this. So I would literally rip my shirt off to remind myself this should be silly, it should be fun. And then I put my shirt back on, and then one day I forgot to put it back on, and some lady was like, keep it off, and I kept it off. But the fun is what motivates me entirely. I mean, I love touring. I love the camp feel of like everyone in the tour bus waking up at the same time, going to bed late. I love all of it. I mean, I'm looking forward to Fully Loaded that I cannot contain myself. Like I can't believe it's real. I can't believe that Fully Loaded is going to happen again. I really honestly can't believe. And so, yeah, the fun is what motivates me. Honestly, if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't fucking do it.